Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Happy Knitting Podcast. My name is Julia and I'm coming to you from the UK. Today is Saturday the 29th of October 2022 and I'm just so happy you're joining me today to talk about some knitting. As you know, this podcast has been all over the place and most likely will continue to do so, but I am just so happy I've managed to find some time to show you what I've been up to. It may not sort of go seamlessly from the last episode because I don't really remember what I was working on then and what I've shown you and what I hadn't shown you and so on, but I've just sort of gone through my Ravelry and grabbed all the things that I've recently finished or I'm knitting on. I have 9 FOs to show you, so let's just chat. I've also got some acquisitions which we'll see if I have the time to show you, but maybe we will. I have brought them up just in case, so let's get started. As per usual, I'm not super organized with giving you all the details and nitty-gritty things about my projects, such as needle sizes and such. So I will just link Ravelry below. And if you can use Ravelry, just click on the link to my project pages and everything should be there. And if you can't use Ravelry, just send me a comment and I will try to answer your question. All right, should we start with what I'm wearing? I am wearing the Flores sweater that I was working on last time we talked. This is the Flores by Eri Shimizu. Sorry, I'm looking down because I do have my laptop there because I cannot remember the designer's name otherwise. And Eri designed this a bit differently to what I've made, so I've modified it a little bit. I think the original is a bit more flowy and a bit more bat-wingy, and it's sort of cropped with a really long rib that like cinches it all in, whereas I sort of used the pattern as a starting point, but I made less sort of bat wing sleeves, so I've changed the increase rate on the body versus the sleeves. I've also sort of made it a more standard length, and I did my own sleeve decreases and my own ribbing. So you still get the stitch pattern, which I think is really pretty. It's just like a broken rib, and it works really nicely with the increases. And as I suspected, after blocking and wearing this has sort of loosened up a bit. Because of the broken rib, first it was really sort of tight fitting and very structured, whereas now it's sort of relaxed a little bit and opened up a little bit, and I really like it that way. So now it just feels like a sort of sweatshirt style garment to wear when it's not super cold. The yarn that I used for this is Hedgehog Fiber singles, skinny singles in the Artifact colorway, which I got just as COVID started to become a thing, went back when I was pregnant, and somehow this has become a bit of a sort of emotionally attached yarn, I guess. Like, it just very much reminds me of that phase and being pregnant and all of that. But I've really loved this colorway. I'm glad I splurged 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago. And I have finally turned this into a garment. So that is my Flores sweater. Another sweater that I've finished, I'm not even sure if I showed you this. This is my sweater dress. That's just what we're calling it. This is a self-drafted pattern. I'm not going to release anything. I haven't even written down anything. This is literally just a top-down raglan that I sort of figured out by myself using some German yarn. It's sort of mystery yarn because I know there are a few places in Germany that sell sort of the Aran DK, more like Aran weight, German merino yarn. And I don't quite remember where I got these skeins from. I have quite a few skeins of that kind of wool in my stash. Most of them don't have labels. But I decided to just make a sweater with this one. So I don't even know the yardage or anything, but it was quite a thick yarn. I think it was like a 15 stitch gauge. So I decided to do a top-down raglan. I sort of fitted with the sleeve and body increases again to get the fit that I wanted. And then use this pink yarn, which is also a German merino yarn, but it feels a little bit thinner, so I'm thinking this must be a different weight. I added some stripes, and I had so much yarn, and I had been planning to knit a dress for a while. So while I was knitting this and thinking about the dress, I was like, why don't I just turn this into the dress? So that's exactly what I did. I think I had 6 100-gram skeins of the gray, and I used 5 of them. and then obviously some of the pink. And what I really like doing is like super long ribs. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm taking it too far, but I made a very long rib at the bottom. I also made relatively long cuffs. So this can be worn sort of with jeans. Like, it's not super long in the way that it looks weird with jeans, I think. But obviously you can also wear it with tights. Like, it just sort of covers the bum. It's not a long dress, but it's just been so comfortable. And as you will see throughout this episode, my knits at the moment are very functional, which is weird because I've always been a process knitter. Like, I've always sort of knitted what felt right, and I like things that I like the look and the colors of, and not necessarily, I've never necessarily looked at it from a functional perspective so much as like, what do I need to make to stay warm? But welcome to the cost of living crisis here in the UK, and I think pretty much everywhere. It is the end of October and we still have no heating on, so gotta stay warm. So this has been one of those functional pieces. Like, I've just been wearing this non-stop. And just that extra length and the non-superwash yarn, like thick woolly yarn, this has kept me so warm. And it's already looking a little bit worn, which is fine by me because, you know what, this is meant to be used. It's also covered in my hair. And yeah, I'm really happy about it. Funnily enough, the first time I put this on, I went to like a toddler group with my son. Immediately spilled coffee all over it, but it took it pretty well. You can't even see it anymore. So it's been, because I was worried the light color might just be not very practical, but it's actually been alright. So yeah, this is my sweater dress. I'm sorry I don't have much detail to give you. I put in some short rows and then just marked it with a bit of pink inside to show me where the back is, because I'm not fancy enough to put labels in my sweaters. But yeah, I am very, very happy with this. Next up, I have a couple of finished objects that I haven't shown you before. Where should we start? I also, talking about functional garments, I really needed some warmer socks because I wear my hand-knit socks pretty much all the time. Like, either it is super hot and I will just be barefoot, or I'll be wearing my hand-knit socks. And I've really noticed, again, our house is quite cold. It's a sort of Edwardian era house with no heating. And although we've had unseasonably warm weather, which has been saving us, it does get quite chilly. So I decided I wanted to make some thicker weight socks, and I looked at like Regia 6-ply or 8-ply. I looked at Coop Knits, DK sock yarn, but all of these things were quite pricey for what I just really wanted. I just wanted to have some woolly yarn, and I didn't feel like I had something in stash that would work. I didn't necessarily need nylon in them because I figure I'm just going to wear them at home. And then I found a really affordable option, which is this yarn. I brought it up to show you. This is West Yorkshire Spinners Colour Lab DK. So this is a British yarn made in Yorkshire, 225 meters per 100 grams. And I think I got this for like £4 per ball. So this is a steal, considering this is 100% wool yarn. So I got a couple of balls and I made myself some ribbed thick socks. I haven't even worn these, funnily enough. But I did some research on Ravelry and figured out that I should be able to make a pair of DK weight socks out of a 100-gram ball. And I did. So what I did is I split the yarn, the ball in the middle. I weighed it and turned it into two 50-gram balls. And I didn't do any color management because I thought, you know, I must just use every little bit of yarn that I have. So I did toe-up socks. I think I increased to about 44 stitches. Something like that. It is on my Ravelry. And yeah, so I did 2x2 rib on the top of the sock, turned the heel, did a shadow wrap heel, which is the heel I always use, and then did 2x2 ribbing around the entirety of the leg. And there you go, some warm socks. They fit really well. Are they the most pretty socks I've ever made? Not really. They're also, I like the yarn, but it is definitely woolly. I don't love the feel of it, but it is exactly what I needed. So I made myself a pair of thick socks, and I also have some more of this yarn to eventually turn into socks either for my husband or myself or my son, who knows. I think my husband would like some, but after knitting a pair of these, I just needed to knit on something else, so I haven't started them, but who knows. Yeah, so I've finished a pair of DK weight socks. And last time I was talking to you, I was working on this hat. This is my, well, it started out as a Musselburgh hat by Isolde Teague, but I didn't do like the proper double folded hat. I just used the instructions to cast on the top down hat, knit like the body of the hat, if you want to say that, and then I just did a fold over brim. And I knitted this for my toddler, and I talked last time about how I want him to have like a colorful selection of hats, and he's quite picky with his hats, and he's worn this a couple of times, but he doesn't love it. He's really sensitive if things are sort of, I don't even want to say tight, because this isn't tight on his head, but it is too tight for him to be comfortable for some reason. So he's worn this a couple of times, but I felt like it wasn't the perfect hat just yet. So I made him another one. And this is actually the Musselburgh hat. So for this one, I've actually knitted like a long tube. Oh yeah, I can't take it apart because I did sew in the ends. So, but imagine this was twice as long and you just stuff one end in the other, and there you go, you have a double hat. And for this one, I used a ball of Drops Air that I had in stash. I don't particularly like Drops Air. I've knit a sweater out of it before and it just doesn't hold up very nicely. But I had it in stash, so I figured I'd make him a really, really soft hat, and this one he loves. The flaws with this one is, again, I think the yarn just sort of stretches out, so it's quite wide, but not very long. And I wonder if you've knit the Musselburgh hat and knit like the smallest sizes, I wonder if they're too short. Because I followed the pattern, but there's no way I could fold this up without it looking absolutely ridiculous. It could also have to do with the yarn. I'm pretty sure I didn't make any measuring errors, and I don't mind it. But this hat is not as long as it should be. My toddler loves it. This is the only hat he can put on himself, so he's actually been wearing this quite a bit, which is why it's also looking a bit worn. But in terms of toddler emotions, this has been a winner. It's not quite like the perfect hat that I dream of making him, but it's done the job, so he's been wearing this quite a bit. And yeah, so another finished object. And on the topic of hats, I made myself a hat too. Because you may or may not know, I'm not sure, but I really like having like a lot of hats, like 2x2 ribbed hats in my coat pockets. Because I feel like you always need a hat. Like I like to have a hat stuffed into my coats, into my jackets, into backpacks that we go out with. Because eventually someone will always need a hat. And the good thing with the 2x2 ribbed hats is that while this is sort of my size, it actually fits the toddler as well if it really has to. Like I have a white one similar to this. I think the white one was the watch cap hat by PAYHIP that I knit holding 2 strands of sock yarn double, and toddler keeps stealing it. And yeah, so I felt like doing some stash busting. So what I did is I got out my singles, minis and leftovers, because I have a big bin of minis and I have sort of sorted them into like singles and self-striping and so on. And I just decided to hold them double and make a 2x2 hat, which this one took me less than 24 hours to knit. Just sort of like a colorful palette cleanser. And of course, toddler saw this and thought it was his, and he loves it. So I may have to make more of these scrappy hats. But yeah, there's no pattern for this. I think I cast on 88 stitches. 2x2 rib, and then I just sort of made my own decreases. So there's no pattern for this, but if you want a pattern, I'm sure either look at the watch cap hat, which is free, or just look for any 2x2 ribbed hats on Ravelry, and I'm sure you will find like a million of them. So yeah, that is another finished object. Also, I finished the shawl that I was talking about last week. I have not blocked this. Oh, I'm showing you the back. Beautiful. I have not blocked it. This is a modification of the Botanical shawl by Stephen West. The modification being that I only did half the decreases to get a more sort of elongated triangle rather than a sort of really, was it wide? Would it be a wide triangle? Anyways, I talked about this in detail last week, so I'm not going to go into any detail here. But I did finish it, and Toddler has decided it is his blanket, which is why it hasn't been blocked, because he's just been using it and cuddling it on the couch, and so what? So yeah, the purple yarn, sort of the color changing yarn, is hand spun that I spun years and years and years ago. These are hand spun singles from was it a bat or a braid from Sarah's Texture Crafts, who is now no longer dying. And the black was some leftover drops Flora, I think. And I basically knit until I ran out of the black yarn. And then I just sort of did a bit of just the hand spun, and then I cast off because I was just not excited by this anymore. So yeah, this is sort of like a scarfy thing. I'm not sure how useful it's going to be, but it was knit from stash, and I always like getting stash out of my yarn closet. So yeah, there you go. And 2 more finished objects. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rushing through these, but I also don't think they're super interesting to spend hours and hours on. I did another functional knit because I feel like I needed a cowl in my life. And funny story, I knit a lovely cable cowl last year, patterned by Heather and Hops. Yeah, I can't think of the name, but she has a lovely sort of cable-y cowl pattern, and I knit it, and it was beautiful, and I sort of finished it in spring, and now I can't find it. So I decided again to look into my stash, and I found, was it a ball? I think it might have been only 50 grams of drops alpaca. So I decided to just hold a double and just knit a cowl for as long as I could get out of 50 grams. And I've done a broken rib, so it's you knit 1 round and then you knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl for 1 round, did some ribbing on either end, and I basically just did this until I ran out of yarn. And I've been wearing this a lot, so this used to be longer, and now it's sort of stretched out and become this sort of weird wide thing. But you know what? It's actually been really nice. I'm always amazed at what difference it makes if you have something warm around your neck. And this is super light. I tend to forget I'm wearing it, but it's actually been really good. And I wasn't sure if the 100% alpaca would bother me, but it doesn't. So yeah, another quick project. And then lastly, you're not going to believe this, but I crocheted a bag. So the backstory behind this is that we were in France at the beginning of September on holiday. And I went to one yarn store, which was Le Chat qui Tricote in Aix-en-Provence. And when we walked in, they had this display of cotton yarns. And I think they came with a book on knitted and crocheted bags. So the yarn, I got the yarn that came with the book. I didn't get the book. It was a DMC yarn, DMC Nova, I believe. And it's 100%, I think, recycled cotton. And it just came in this gradient. They have had a couple of different ones. And actually, my husband also liked the idea of having a bag. Like, that would be quite practical. Yeah, so I got the yarn in September. And it's sort of been looking at me. And I decided one day to just go for it. And if you've been watching, you know I'm not a great crocheter, and I also can't read crochet patterns. So what I did is I looked at a couple of YouTube videos of market bags, and then I just sort of picked and chose what felt right to me. So I can't give you any pattern. I also can't remember what I did, but it started with this sort of like circular beginning. And then I just sort of looked at different videos and did my own thing, which I know is really not helpful. But it turned into a bag. Like, I improvised some straps, and this looks sort of funny now, but once I start putting stuff in it, it's going to stretch. This is why I didn't make the straps too long, because I feel like this thing is going to stretch so much. Yeah, so I made a bag, and I'm really quite happy with it. I'm not sure if I need to do it again, because as great as a Christmas present it would be to have these bags for lots of people, I found it quite hard on my hands. But it was fun to make one. My son thinks this is the bag for his cars now because he's obsessed with cars. But yeah, I will use it and report back on it to you, but I am quite happy with my crochet neck bag. Sorry, I just realized my camera was playing up a bit, but anyways, we have made it through all the FOs. My voice is going, but let's just talk about some whips really quickly. So, first up, I came back to a pair of socks that I also knit on holiday in France. So I knit the first sock bar, I think, the Kitchener stitch when we were away, and then as you do, you come back and I lost this whip. I couldn't find it anymore, and then the other day it had somehow turned up again, and I don't really feel like knitting these socks right now, but I figured I should finish them. So I have since started the second sock and have been working on the leg of the sock. This sock is a Hermione's Everyday sock, which is a free pattern. I'm sure you have probably seen it before. And the yarn that I'm using, I have lost the label, but this is a Easy Knits colorway. I got this skein of Easy Knits just after we moved here 2 years ago on sale, so I don't really remember much about it, but I thought it was a fun color, and it feels like a high twist base. I'm not sure if it's a high twist merino or a high twist BFL, but I quite like it with the speckles, and it just felt like a good sort of cheerful holiday project, and now I'm trying to get it done. And as per usual, I'm doing 2.25 millimeter needles and the US, is that a US size 1? And 64 stitches, and this time, because I don't like to knit on wooden needles, and I know different airlines have different rules about knitting needles, and I think they're sort of stricter in the EU, so I'm never sure about taking metal needles on the plane, but this time I decided to just risk it and put these on metal needles that I don't really care that much about. So I wouldn't have wanted to use like my Haya sharps or my Chao Gu needles, but these are some old Knit Pro Novas, which I don't mind the Knit Pro Novas. They're actually not bad needles. They're quite affordable. They do the job, but I don't love them. So I figured I'll just try it. This particular pair I think has been used quite a bit, so the joints aren't great. So if they had taken them off me, I wouldn't have minded. But no, they made it through airport security there and back, no problem. And now I sort of don't want to switch them because I don't know if switching needles might change the gauge. Although probably I would enjoy working on them more with other needles that are just a little bit more slippy, because I find these ones, they're just a little bit grippy, and I know lots of people like grippy needles, but I don't. So yeah, fun fact about that. Alright, should we talk about some new cast-ons? I have sort of 3 big projects on the needles at the moment. Where do we start? Let's start with what's on top. And I have cast on another no frills sweater using woolly knit British wool. Yeah, so I've knit my fair share of no frills sweaters. I do like petite knits aesthetic sometimes. This, I think, is the only one of the patterns that isn't size inclusive, so that's not great. To be honest, I'm using this pattern because I have it in my library, and I'm just trying to reuse patterns and save some money and make use of what I have, but there are lots and lots and lots of top-down raglans out there. What I like about this one, to be honest, is I think it makes a really nice neckline. I know Rebecca of Crea Bear just said the opposite, but I quite like the neckline. I like how these particular short rows, I think, make a really sort of nice fitting neckline that doesn't it doesn't come up here. It also doesn't sag. It works quite well for my body type, I guess. And I am using Woolly Knits British wool in the cinnamon colorway, which, I mean, it has to be their best colorway, right? I love it. I got this in their sale last year, their Black Friday sale. And yeah, it sat around for a while, so I figured I might as well knit with it, so I am holding it double. I am not sponsored, by the way. This is just me talking about my yarn. I should have mentioned this earlier, but yeah, so I have finished the yoke of my no frills, and I am now working on the body. And I've knit this exact pattern with the same yarn last year. So what I did is I just followed the mods that I did last year. So I think I stopped increasing once I had 60 stitches per sleeve, because my gauge is not the gauge that Petite Knits pattern is. I think my last one had a gauge of 18 to 19 stitches, and my knitting has definitely loosened since, so I would reckon this is probably like an 18 stitch gauge. But I am not doing this super precisely because it's a top-down, oversized raglan, so yeah. So that is one thing I'm working on. Another thing that I'm working on, once I solve this mess of yarn that I have here, somehow I have tangled my projects, is, yes, I have cast on another half and half wrap, half and half triangles wrap by Pearl Soho. I think I said last time that I feel the urge that another one is going to happen eventually, and it did. So yeah, it's so weird. I know some people must be so sick of everyone talking about this half and half wrap, but here I am making another one because it's making me happy. And this is Knit Picks palette yarn that I got on sale quite a while ago. This was really, really, really affordable. And you know what? I am really enjoying this yarn. I have quite a bit in my stash, and I don't think I've ever used it beyond like small accessories. And I'm really, really, really enjoying it. This is the Oyster Heather colorway, and I'm almost done. Can you see? I'm almost done with the first triangle. I didn't bring my contrast color up, but I'm gonna use I'm 99% sure I'm going to use a sort of light coral color to go with it, which is going to make it really, really bright. But I think that's what I'm going to do. And yeah, I'm quite excited by it. Literally this much to go. So I'm about to go into my 5th ball of yarn. So I was worried for a while that I would run out of yarn, but I won't. I cast on 220 stitches for this one. I am using 3.5mm needles, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it so much. As per usual, I am doing German short rows rather than wrap and turns. And for the first time, I'm also doing the I-cord that everyone seems to be doing. I'm not sure if I prefer this to my previous ones where I just did a selvage stitch. I think once I make my next one, because yes, there will be a next one, I will go back to the selvage stitch. But I also do quite like this one, and yeah, I just love the fabric. It's really nice and flowy, and yeah, couldn't be happier about it. Last but not least, we have a work in progress that I literally cast on this morning. So there's not very much to write home about. This is it. Doesn't this look great? This is a beautiful project. No, all jokes aside, I was inspired mostly by my friend Jetske, who is Knitting Red Panda, I think so. She's a friend of mine on Instagram, and she has just completed the most beautiful Boxy. And I know, like years and years and years ago, we used to all knit Boxies, and then I feel like everyone has moved on to trendier things. But I thought, you know what, actually having another Boxy, like a woolly Boxy, would be quite nice. Because I have knit 2 Boxies, which, if you don't know, is a sort of oversized, very wide sweater pattern by Joji Locatelli. I've knit 2 in the past. One, I don't even know if it exists anymore. I definitely don't have it anymore. I must have given it to someone. So I did one with like a fade, and I did it extra long, and then it turned out if you make it really wide and really long, it wasn't really flattering on me and it wasn't useful. And so that one wasn't the greatest success. And then the second one I did, I knit out of Wollmeise lace. And that one was quite nice, except I think I want one that's a bit longer and a bit bigger now. So I wore that for a while. I'm not really wearing it at the moment. And so I saw that she was making one out of a woolly yarn and doing a steeked version, which very much spoke to me. And I asked her what yarn she was using, and she said Knit Picks palette, which was perfect because I have more Knit Picks palette in my stash, and I've actually been wanting to use it. So this morning, together with a friend of mine, hi Marion, I also coaxed her into casting on a Boxy sweater with me. So this is the Knit Picks palette yarn I'm using for this one. I don't know the colorway name, I don't have the label on me, but it's the marled one. I think it's the black and white. So they have a couple of marled colorways, which I think is really beautiful. I have a knack for mild things. And what I've done this morning is I have literally cast on and done a bit of ribbing. So I haven't even joined it in the round yet, because the risk of twisting it when you join it in the round really early is just really high, and you're only knitting rib anyway. So what I tend to do is I knit the rib back and forth, and once I sort of see more what I'm doing, I will then join it in the round. In terms of modifications, as with my 2 previous boxies, I have cast on less stitches because I don't want it to be, it'll still be huge, but it doesn't need to be crazy super huge. Huge will be fine. So I cast on 300 stitches compared to what it tells you in the pattern, and I'm just going to adjust once I get to the top bit. I think that'll be quite an easy fix, and I have done it before. So I've cast on using 3mm needles. I am planning to then knit this sweater on 3.5mm needles, and I'm thinking, like, this is not going to be a sweater for now. It's not going to be a sweater for like winter, but because it's a thin fingering weight yarn. But I think as a sort of all year round throw on garment, it'll be really handy. And I think this married effect will actually make it quite useful for my wardrobe as well, because it'll just go with everything. It'll look great with jeans. I don't necessarily have to be super fragile with it. So yeah, I am quite excited about this one, and this is what I'm planning to knit on today. Alright, that's it for my works in progress, bar one pair of socks that I forgot to bring up, but they are not super exciting. So, shall we talk about some life and yarn acquisitions and all of that? If you're not interested in that, that's totally fine. I still don't know how I feel about the whole like showing off hauls and stuff. So I haven't done it in the past. I used to do it and then I stopped, and now I feel like if I have a story to tell behind it and doing some like project planning, it can be quite interesting. Like, I like to see what other people bought, but I appreciate it's not what everyone likes, and also it's not in everyone's budget, and oh god, I understand that so much. So if you don't want to see that, then I will hopefully see you soon. And if you do want to stick around, let's talk about some yarn and London yarn shopping. So as I mentioned, quite recently we had our 2-year anniversary of living in the UK, which is crazy. I mean, it feels like a million years ago that we moved here. And also, how has it been 2 years? Which, I don't know. Still blows my mind. And funnily enough, I had never been to a yarn store in London, even though we are like 30 minutes away, if even that, by train. Because obviously the first year we basically couldn't travel because we had lockdowns and tears and God knows what. Like, there was just no way. And also, yarn shopping with a toddler isn't great. Like, I've been to a couple of yarn stores. I went to one in Cambridge. I've been to like the odd ones in the area, but it's not great. It's not the same. And then if we do like family trips, I tend to sort of want to do family stuff rather than make them wait with the buggy outside of stores or have my toddler tear apart stores, all of that. So it just never really happened. And doing like a London yarn crawl again with a buggy, you can't really get on the tube, and it's just a big nightmare. But last weekend I took a solo trip into London, and it was amazing. And everyone suggested I should do like a proper yarn crawl, and I didn't. But what I did do is I went to one yarn store that was lovely, and that is can you see? Beautiful Knitters. So I believe Beautiful Knitters isn't even, I mean, it's been there for a while, but it's not one of like the traditional yarn stores in London. But it's in Victoria, which was easy for me to get to, and it was lovely. So because it was just me, I took some knitting. On the way there, I just sat down, had a coffee, like an uninterrupted coffee and snacks, which if you have kids, you know how rare this is. Did some knitting and then sort of walked over to their shop. And it's not a massive shop, but it's full of yarn and projects, and I absolutely loved it. I think I was there for about an hour just chatting to the owners and people who work there, and everyone who came in seemed to be tourists, which was interesting to me. Like, they were all talking about yarn stores all over the world, and yeah, it was quite interesting. It was an interesting crowd, but I really, really enjoyed it. And even though, yeah, well, I'm not really supposed to be buying yarn, but I don't make the rules, right? I went a little bit nuts and bought some yarn because I figured this is sort of my day and I will make the most of it. So what did I get? I tried to get things that I either haven't seen before and like I was definitely in a sort of autumnal sock knitting mood. So the first thing I got was this yarn, which I had never seen before. This is Isaiah sock yarn. And this, I always like trying different sock yarns. I don't really believe in non-superwash nylon-free sock yarns. I know this is a big thing, but they don't hold up. And for me, I like to make things that hold up over years and years and years and years, rather than making something that doesn't have nylon in it. And then I will just, have to reknit a pair in a month or 6 months. But this is a machine washable yarn. It is 40% easy wash alpaca, 40% easy wash merino, and 20% recycled nylon. So I thought this was really interesting, and they had a sample of this yarn knit up, and it felt really good. So I got myself one skein of this. I will say I didn't like this color. I love the rest of the colors. They're all solids, which is fine, but they weren't really my wheelhouse. But it's nice to see something different, so I got this. I'm planning to knit, I was planning to knit some birthday socks for Kai. It's probably not going to happen, but he might get some Christmas socks. And they had a sample of this knit up. This is signature 4-ply by West Yorkshire Spinners. And this is the Goldfinch colorway, and I have knit with quite a bit of their signature 4-ply before, and I really like it. Again, this is a British yarn. So I got a skein of this. Hopefully, I'm hoping to cast this on soon, but I'm not really making progress with my socks at the moment, so who knows. And then I found a yarn that I had never seen before. So this is the Queensland Collection Perth Australian Superwash Wool Blend. And this is a sock yarn that has sort of the effect of like crazy Sauberball and all these sort of barber pole sock yarns. And this was quite affordable, I thought, for what it was. So it's 80% superwash wool, 20% nylon, and it's your basic 400 meters per 100 grams 4-ply sock yarn. And the samples that they had there were quite colorful and color changing, and like I said, I think it sort of mimics Sauberball. But then I found this one, which I thought was quite interesting. Like, I can't even tell now, is it gray, is it greenish, is it pinkish? It sort of just varies, and I thought it was really, really interesting. So I got a ball of this, and then I fell down a rabbit hole, which I will definitely blame on Crabbear. They had some Kinross 4-ply, which maybe you've heard this in UK knitting podcasts before. And I'm not trying to be cliquish here, it's just where I heard about it myself. So this is a Scottish yarn. It comes in 50-gram skeins, and I think it's made by Wee County Yarns. And so this is a fingering weight yarn, and it doesn't look super fancy in the skein, but they had some samples, and they just were so woolly and so soft. Like, the yarn must just change so much from washing and wearing, and it was absolutely beautiful. So I did get myself let's say a small sweater quantity. So I got this yarn color, which apparently is a new one. It's called Quartz, shade number 16. And then I got myself one skein of orange, which is called Highland Cow, which, I mean, that already makes me want to buy it. So I'm planning to make some sort of little colorwork yoke cropped thing with this. Probably not immediately, because again, I think that'll be a good project for spring, maybe, because this is not going to be super, super warm. But they had a cowl knit up with a similar gray, and it was like a squirrel cowl, and it was really, really cute. And yeah, it just felt like I was buying mostly like, this is British yarn. I've been trying to use like local things, and this seemed like a good thing to buy. So yeah, there's my autumnal sort of shaded haul. I'm definitely into autumnal shades at the moment, and this is what I got. And yeah, I just really enjoyed myself. Like, after going to the yarn store, I just sort of walked around, did some knitting with a view of Westminster, and then just like walked all the way across London to Borough Market and like places I'd been to before, but places I'd always gone with a toddler, which again, I love my toddler, but he's not really great with like sightseeing and like enjoying the little things. You're usually busy like keeping up with the snacks and making sure he doesn't jump off a bridge or whatever. So it was really nice. I had a good day, and I'm glad I got some souvenir yarn that definitely will remind me of that trip. So yeah, that is my yarny goodness, and that's basically it for the knitty content. In terms of what's been happening, honestly, more of the same. My husband started his new job, and he spent the first month traveling quite a bit. I did my first sort of 4 day, 3 nights solo parenting stint, which went okay actually. It wasn't too bad. And yeah, we've just been getting into this new routine and trying to get settled in. And there's a lot of moving parts in the background, but I think we're starting to get there, and I'm starting to get a bit more knitting time. The toddler is starting to chill out a bit more again. So yeah, things are going quite well. I have some family visiting soon, and I mean, dare I say, it's going to be Christmas soon. I have decided not to do any Christmas knitting, and I'm sure I'm going to change my mind, but I'm really trying to not put the burden of Christmas knitting on myself and just make it easy for myself, because I don't enjoy Christmas knitting, and it's going to be so busy anyways, and the last thing I need is my crafting to become some sort of, well, it's not really joyful if it's deadline knitting, is it? So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I'm just trying to immerse myself with as much knitting as I can in my free time, which obviously is very limited. But yeah, that's basically what's been happening. Nothing super crazy to write home about, but that's also a good thing. So I'm going to go back to my Saturday, which is going to be full of knitting, as my husband said he is going to spend some time with Toddler. They already made some gingerbread cookies earlier, which I think my husband may have been more excited than my son, but that's always the way. It's a rainy day here in the UK, so probably just going to cuddle up, cozy up, have loads and loads of coffee, and light a candle and do some knitting in my Boxy. So thank you so much if you've joined me all the way until the end. I really appreciate you guys coming back. I know this isn't sort of your regular podcast in many ways. It is very unscripted, and I just don't have the time to like make everything pretty and super edited. This is just me and my knitting, but I'm so glad that so many of you do actually choose to join in and follow along. And I know some of you have been watching for years and years and years, which is crazy. So thank you for joining me. I hope you have a lovely weekend, whatever you're doing. I hope you are staying safe and healthy, and I will hopefully talk to you sometime soon. Take care. Happy knitting. Bye.